A very pleasant good afternoon as we welcome you into the Goon and Ironhead show on this Tuesday afternoon. And those of you that are astute observers will notice that this is not the dear Goon, an equally big human being, though, maybe not quite equally, but a big human being nonetheless. Landon Tangwall joining us here for today's show, filling in for the dear Goon, who is recovering from a dental procedure. We'll leave it at that here today. Landon, we sincerely thank you for being willing to pinch hit today.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you for having me on.
Landon asked exactly, all right, what are we going to do here? How are we going to go about this? And it's like, well, it's pretty free flowing. We never really have a set agenda, and we do have a lot of fun. We'll get into a lot of different things, but since we have you, Landon, just one of the things I wanted to just talk to you a bit about is the off season as a football player, and in particular the winter workouts, and then we're what 2 weeks, basically 3 weeks from the start of spring practices on March 12th. Just kind of how do you handle that? It is a time where you're trying to zero in on schoolwork. Is it a time where you're just obviously you're trying to make some gains in the weight room and that sort of thing, but what is that so-called off season, which I always get a kick out of that because especially with coaches and athletes, it's like they have the off seasons usually our busier time of the year. But what is it like for you guys as players?
Absolutely. I like how you use the term off season very loosely because it's compared to something like the NFL, very different. You come back, you finish bowl prep, all that stuff. You get back early January and you get a week, maybe two at home to really let that body actually heal. And then you're back, you're pounding the weights, you are running every day. You get about a month until winter workouts start. In early February, they just had their 5th winter workout this morning. There's 8 of them. And it's a grind right off the jump because you got, new coming freshmen that just got here. You got to set the precedent for them. You have to, get them ready for spring ball. And that's even something that I want to talk a little bit about is that when you first get here as a true freshman and you early enrollee, it is very different than when you come in the summertime. Because you come in the summertime, the coaches are on the road a little bit more. You're with the strength coaches, but you have a little bit more time to learn that playbook. It kind of gets your feet under yourselves a little bit. When you come in right after the season, it's January, you early enroll, you're still technically supposed to be in high school. You're a young kid. It can be really difficult. Just the fact everything's moving 1,000 miles per hour. You have to learn the whole playbook. You got to be ready for spring ball in a couple weeks because you're gonna have Coach Franklin right up your butt screaming at you if you don't know every single check at the line and you're not ready for that. So it's intense for not only even the body but for the mind right away coming off the off season. So like I said, it's definitely not an off season as many fans would think of it. The Penn State and Indy Lions they're grinding right now, and they're grinding early in the morning too, Jeff. 4:30 in the morning. Those wake ups. Sometimes you sit off and you kind of stare off into the distance, and you sit there at your locker and you think, "Wow, I could be in bed right now getting some good sleep."
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, just the transition, and obviously it's a transition athletically, what the demands are with the time constraints, but also academically, and trying to make that switch from high school classes to college classes, and by the way, away from home in most cases for the first time in your life. And I do think sometimes we media fans kind of take for granted. Well, yeah, they're football players. They got the accommodations. There is a lot going on. I mean, if you remember back to when you made that transition as a non-Division I athlete going from high school to college, there's a lot of things going on at the same time, and then you add in the Division I athletics component. And listen, these guys, you're recognizable right out of the gate on the Penn State campus. It's not like you're walking around in a cloak of anonymity on the campus either. So, it's a lot to deal with, I think, when folks first get here, and especially as you said, if you're an early enrollee and trying to hit the ground running in January, that is not as easy a task as I think many may initially think.
Yeah, absolutely not. And the coaching staff does a great job of trying to minimize those problems as much as possible. As soon as you get here, you're at the MAC, where you're the Morgan Academic Center, and you have to be in there for 10 to 12 hours as a true freshman until you prove yourself that you don't. They'll start cutting back a little by little as you start to prove yourself. Hey, I can handle these classes. I can get A's and B's, and I can get all my homework done. So before everybody comes in with the same constraint of, you're going to be in the MAC, you're proving yourself, and then once you show us what you can do, we'll pull it back a little bit. And thankfully, I was aware of that. I got all my stuff done, and I was out of the MAC by freshman year. And it's hard. Sometimes you'll have practice, a lift, and then you got to go to the MAC at night from 6 to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And some guys, and I even went to a top 25 program in the nation as far as high school football, and even coming in still, it's such a shock of just your schedule that you're on. You look at your phone, and we have an app called Teamworks, and essentially the people, they're laying out your every second of your day for you.
Yeah.
And you're not used to that. You're used to going in, practice maybe a little bit, and you head home, and you got time with the family and stuff like that. It's a big change coming here to college football at Penn State, especially.
Yeah, it would be again, just a whole lot to juggle. And the funny thing is, a lot of kids, like I think back to my transition, it's like one of the struggles was actually trying to figure out, okay, how do I schedule my day? What I have more freedom than I'm used to, but there's things I know I got to get done. Man, it's very structured, right, for you guys coming in, which in some ways I suppose is a help, but it's also got has to be a little overwhelming, just because, again, that lack of free time and being able to negotiate some of the other elements of the college lifestyle and the college scene. That's got to be a challenge.
It is, and like you said, said the word structure, and that's what you have to have with a football team. And when these young guys come in, it's also very important from a locker room standpoint of having those seniors, those juniors, especially now with having 6-year seniors, taking those young guys under their wing, showing them how it's done. This is the Penn State way. This is how we do things around here. Even little things like leaving your towel around. Hey, we don't do that here. You make sure you pick everything up when you're done in a room, and you cleaning everything up and taking care of your business. We don't cause problems. And like you said, it's very evident to people that you are a Penn State football player when you walk around the campus or downtown. I think sometimes guys think it's a secret, and they'll act a fool, and then sometimes people will be looking at them, and it's like, hey, you have to understand who you are now and what you represent. You represent something bigger than yourself. But like I said, having a older group of guys and the coaches to help bring them along, I think we have a great group, and these young guys that we brought in, Coach Franklin always does a fantastic job bringing in some really young talent. And speaking of how hard it is to come in, right away in January, it's so impressive then when you see standouts in spring ball that are true freshmen that just got here. When you know how difficult that is for these young guys, that really tells you a lot about the player and really how ready they are. I mean, we've seen some big standouts over the past couple of years. Kalen King, when we first got here, had a fantastic spring ball, and I think he followed that up with a pretty good career here at Penn State. And,
not bad.
Yeah, not at all. So I'm excited to see what young guy can step up this spring ball and showcase some elite talent at a young age.
Landon, for that that initial transition for the new guys coming in, what is it like for the veteran players? Like was there a specific mentor that they either assigned to you, or that you just gravitated toward, or they gravitated toward you? Or is it just, hey, this is what it is, we'll try to guide you? Because it's got to be a little bit, for the veterans, it's got to be a little bit challenging also, because, and especially if you have, a new hotshot wide receiver, and you were the 3 receiver last year, right? Hey, I'm a team guy, but I want my playing time. Talk about that dynamic a little bit, and just how is that handled in terms of the players looking out for the players?
Well, first off, when you come in, as far as how the locker room is structured, Coach Franklin did a good job. And actually, this goes back to Barney Amore, our punter, a few years back. We had a lot of the older guys in the middle of the locker room, and the way the locker room is set up, it's essentially a big rectangle, and then there's lockers in the middle, and there was a lot of old guys in the middle, and then younger guys on the outside. And as a leadership council, we kind of sat down and talked and said, hey, it would make a lot more sense to kind of switch it up. And what we actually do is to make sure that it essentially alternates older guy, younger guy, older guy, younger guy. Coach Franklin does also try to do different backgrounds, guys from completely different areas. I loved my corner of the locker room. It was a lot of young guys, and it's good that, like I said, to have those older guys to mentor, just little things. If someone's just doing something wrong, like I said, leaving a towel, leaving a Gatorade bottle, make sure they understand the standard that's set. And then you talk from a standpoint of young guys coming in and competing right away for a position. So some guys may be a little hesitant to want to step up and say, hey, maybe let him figure that out for himself instead of giving them the answers right now. So I'm sure that happens a little bit, and especially now in a new age where NIL. A lot of guys, instant gratification. That's what everybody wants. They want to come in and play right away. So there is kind of almost not knocking someone down a little bit, but if they come in with a big head, sometimes you need that welcome to college football moment to kind of reset you a little bit. And I even remember that I came in and I was essentially a 5-star lineman, and I had been recruited from Penn State for forever. And it was my first spring ball, and it was already a little rocky. And we start out each practice with a competition period, and and we didn't have pads on yet. So it's day 3. We finally put the pads on, and it's O-line, D-line, one-on-ones. So, I get up there after the first group goes, and I remember I'm going against Smith Vilbert, who's, long, strong guy. And, I think I'm going to get up there and do my thing. I take one set, flat on my back. I get bull rushed. I hear the whole team go crazy. I'm looking up, and Franklin's standing over top of me. All right, get up. And so that was my welcome to college football moment. And sometimes those guys kind of need those. And I said, wow, okay, this is going to be difficult. And everybody's big and everybody is strong. So it's definitely a little bit of a wake-up call, those first couple practices too. And so I think that's when you really start to see guys try to take a couple kids under their wings, just because right now when you get there, the winter workouts are hard, and it's early mornings and it's a grind, but you really don't start to see these guys really struggle really hard until you put the pads on. And it's a man's game now. Like I said, everybody's on scholarship, everybody's strong, everybody's big. It's not the same game that you were used to at your local high school when you were just outrunning kids or pancaking kids because you're bigger and stronger than them.
Yeah, it's interesting because different, obviously in my following the wrestling team and covering it, but it's the same thing in football and in any of these sports. They're not all guys, like the light bulb goes on at different times for different folks, right? Like and I don't think there's anybody, at least that I'm aware of. And on the wrestling front, I'm talking about like the Bo Nichols and the Jason Olsen and the David Taylors. They all made the transition well and quickly, but they all had their, yep, I'm looking up at the sky, I got my butt kicked moment when you first get in there. And it's just, again, I don't care how good you are, how elite you are, you're dealing with more experienced, really good elite folks that have learned some tricks of the trade over the years. And again, some of those guys will then, it takes a couple of months and it's like, okay, I'm now where I want to be. But for some, it's a couple of years. It's like, okay, now you see it just all come together. And I think that's one of the interesting dynamics in college athletics in particular, Landon, is, and I've got to imagine for James Franklin, for the coaches, it's part of the reward of being a coach, but it's trying to help people get to that moment. And it may not be a moment, but I mean, to get to that place where, all right, man, everything clicks. I now know what I'm doing. I have an understanding. Not that you never perfect it, but it's like, okay, I got it now. I'm where I want to be, where I thought I'd be. And, obviously some people never get there, but I do think there's almost an expectation, I think, anymore that, hey, this guy's a 5-star recruit. boom, you make an impact right away. And depending on the position and depending on the situation, that may happen. But it may not. And it doesn't mean that it may be that the second, third year guys here that, man, you see now why he was a 5-star, but it doesn't always happen right out of the gate. And it's just funny to me how fans will, all right, that guy was a bust. We're 6 months into the college career. Let's see how it plays out here a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is even more exacerbated with NIL because, before a 5-star came in and you expected him to ball out and, make an impact instantly. But now he's not only a 5-star, but we're dumping 500, a million into him.
Yeah.
And, you're paying that money. You want to see a return instantly. That's some serious money. So I think it actually puts a bigger stress on these big name guys that are coming in right away with these huge deals. And now you start to see maybe some 3-star guys. You don't have that pressure on you. And you see that in the NFL too. If a first round pick, you get that first season, maybe 2 to do something. And if not, you're labeled a bust. And that might be it for your career. If you're a 6th, 7th round guy, 5th round guy, you get a lot more leeway because of where you were taken. And sometimes that confidence, if it gets hurt early on, you can't recover if you're a 5-star first round pick, etc. And the fans are dogging you. And trust me, they some people think, do the players see what we say on Twitter or Instagram? Trust me, they do. Everybody sees it. It's human nature to check that type of stuff and see what people are saying. So I think it can just be really hard on these big name guys to come in and compete. And we've seen what Drew Allar has had to deal with so far of being number 1 quarterback in the nation, and obviously had a fantastic year. His numbers were great, but you still see a lot of people not satisfied with what he's done. And it's almost like I don't even know if you're really able to when you're the number 1 guy. It's you just want more and more, and you just expect more and more from you when you're the top dog.
Yeah, it's again not as easy as I think many may at first blush, but believe it is. They did come out today, and I didn't actually bring it up on our computer, but they did come out today. With the format that they are going to use for the college football playoffs. And it is going to be the 5 and 7 model is what they're calling it. And the interesting part about this, so what they are going to do is take it's presumably going to be the Power 5 conference champions, but it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions, which again, I suppose it's possible that there would be an outlier year where like the Mid-American Conference champion somehow is ranked higher than the ACC champion. But I mean, 95% of the time plus, and maybe 100% of the time, that it's going to be your Power 5. What is currently the Power 5 conferences, that could be changing here pretty quickly as well. And then they're going to take the next 7 highest ranked teams. So all of the other, politics will come into it with the rankings, but all of the other political stuff, at least in theory, is out of the picture. Your thoughts on just that from a fairness / getting and it's not necessarily the same thing, fairness versus getting the best 12 teams in there. Your thoughts on this playoff format?
Yeah, I like it. I like the fact that if you win your conference, you get in. I think that's kind of been the gripe in the past, that some people have won their conference and somehow you don't get in. You get punished for playing in the conference championship because if there's been situations where a team was set, they were going to be in the playoffs, but they had to play their conference game, ended up losing, and then not making it to the playoffs in the past. Some fan bases get pretty pissed off at that. It's not. It's not exactly fair.
Yeah.
But then there's, on the flip side of that, now there is getting way more teams involved. And I actually saw a couple stats that Penn State, if this had been the format for the past 10 years, we would have actually benefited the most out of any team. I think we would have been in the playoffs almost every year. So I'm excited to give more teams that opportunity. And I know I keep bringing up NIL, but I think one thing that NIL has done so far that we've seen in the 2 or 3 seasons it's been around, you look at those playoff teams, even in the previous format with the 4 teams, it's a lot different teams since NIL has been around. You look back the whole 2010s, it was pretty much Clemson, Alabama, then Georgia came on the scene, and that's what you saw every year, Ohio State. Come around this year, you haven't seen Texas in a while, haven't seen Washington in forever. All these teams kind of popping up. I think it's exciting. It's good for the world of college football that all these other teams are excelling. And like I said, NIL spreads the wealth a little bit and allows these other teams that otherwise wouldn't be able to get these top recruits. Well, now you're bringing in some people you wouldn't normally because you have some good funding for your program.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a couple of things, just interesting little caveats, and I don't know. There is still time for some additional tweaking to the format. One of the things that has been pointed out, so the this format is what they are going to do with the seeding is the 4 highest ranked conference champions, okay, are going to be the top 4 seeds. And I think part of what they're trying to do there is, like, if you have Ohio State number 1 and Michigan number 3, you don't necessarily, they don't want Michigan and Ohio State both to be seated in the top 4. So you're preventing any of the conferences from having more than one in the top 4. The thing that I think is going to be interesting to see if they adjust here, and it's been pointed out already by a few folks, that, okay, so if you have Notre Dame go undefeated, ranked number 1 in the country, they can be no better than a number 5 seed. Well, they would be the 5 seed under this. And there's a couple of things. One is, make no mistake, the 5 power conferences, and really, at the end of the day, the SEC and the Big Ten are now the driving force in college football. The NCAA is like 3rd behind Big Ten and SEC, and maybe even as low as 6th, depending on how you want to look at the other 3 conferences. I think part of this, Landon, my reading of this is the Power 5 conferences are saying to Notre Dame, it is time. Like, you got to make your decision. But this flying on your own is not going to cut it in this day and age of college athletics. That's my interpretation. I think this is a message telling Notre Dame, listen, if you fly solo, you are really going to be flying solo.
Yeah, and look, it's been that way for a while. There's been, back in the day when Notre Dame was fighting TV deals, even, back in 60s, 70s, and they were somewhat blackballed for a while because they wanted that independence. So, it's kind of happened before, and I think you're right. I think they're giving them a very heavy shove to say, hey, it's time to join a conference, and then you can start to lock in some rivalries, stuff like that. And I think they would fit best in the Big Ten, and we kind of see where it's heading of a Big Ten versus SEC. That's where we're going. The Pac-12 is really starting to just dissipate. It's really not everybody's big teams leaving the Big 12, headed to the SEC, Texas, Oklahoma, a couple other guys. It's some college football landscape is going to change more, I think, in these, the NIL era, the 2020s, than it has in the past 50, 60 years. And some will say for the better. I think it's going to make for more entertainment. Obviously, college football playoffs just inked I believe, $8 billion deal around there, 7-8 billion through 2033. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. And then that takes you to the talk of, revenue sharing and how that's going to work, because right now the NFL and the players, it's around 50-50. I've seen some people compute some numbers. It's like 80-20 right now as far as what the NCAA is taking in. It's hard to calculate because nothing on NIL is really on paper, but it's evident that it is not anywhere near what the NFL players are making from their revenue sharing. So,
no question. And the interesting dynamic there too is exactly how does let's start with, does a revenue stream get set up to feed the sports that football right now, and to a much lesser degree men's basketball, but football supports at universities like Penn State. Most of the stuff I'm reading, Landon, like it sure sounds like sometime in the coming months there is going to be set up a basically a nonprofit organization, a 501c that will, I don't know whether it will be officially viewed as a donation, but basically that's what it would be, from the football program to the athletic department. So, what is that set up just on a percentage basis? Is it a specific amount? Does it depend on the conference? That is going to be interesting to me on a couple of fronts, because one, and Goon and I have talked a lot about this, but like the Big Ten, Penn State has 31 varsity sports. I think Ohio State has 32. Michigan is over 30 or at 30. So SEC schools, there are some that have 16, and most have 16 to 18 varsity sports that they're supporting. So if it is, well, either way, whether it's a percentage or a block amount that is set aside for the Olympic or non-revenue sports, that is still not going to be equally appropriated from, to all of the teams, all of the athletes in those sports across the country. I don't know how you would set it up so that is the case. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting dynamics here, that obviously a lot of people are sitting down and trying to figure out how to make this work.
Yeah, that is the main issue when you look at the Title IX violations and making sure everybody, it's equally paid out. And that's something that the NFL and NBA, and they don't really have to deal with that type of stuff. So there, from a university standpoint, I think it is a lot more difficult to really navigate this. And I think that's why, we can criticize the NCAA and say that NIL and how messy, and it really wasn't put together well. And we've seen what it's become, where it's, free agency every offseason, and just total chaos. But also when you start to pay people, these absorbent amounts of money, it changes the entire game. It's not college football as we know it anymore. And as much as the fans, some fans might not want it to be changing, that's what it is. And I think everybody who's been involved is understand that this change was going to come eventually. And I think the NCAA wanted to hold off as long as possible, as long as they could. And there was a lot of pushback, and the NCAA has had some battles in court, and they are not to their record in court versus the Supreme Court and U.S. State governments is not very good. They don't seem to be very well liked in the courts.
I think that is fair to say. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll take a look a little bit at the schedule, the actual schedule of the games, and how that may impact things too. I find it interesting that we will have Thursday, Friday games for the semifinals in an effort to not go up against the NFL, which that makes sense. But we're going to come back to the academic component of it, and especially if you're playing in that Thursday game. Now, most schools, I think, will be maybe still in I think most schools would be in break still for that week. I think I'm right about that. And probably most would be starting classes that following Monday. So I think for the most part that is going to be okay, but it's different playing on a Thursday or a Friday from the Saturday routine. So we'll pick up on that and some of the other nuances, if you will, with the new 12-team format and how they are setting it up here for the first year of implementation as we continue with the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Oh, by the way, we are at Quaker Steak and Lube. Landon and I are planning to dig in to the all-you-can-eat wings. They get underway. The all-you-can-eat wing buffet begins at 4, and you might want to come get what you can before 5, because we make no promises that there will be anything left after we go through the line here very shortly after 5 o'clock. They'll restock them. I'm just kidding around. We will take a break here, and again, we will be back with much more here on this Tuesday afternoon. You are listening to a Goonless Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show on Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Your hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
And we welcome you back here on a Tuesday afternoon. Jeff Byers, Landon Tangwall filling in for the Dear Goon on this Tuesday as the Goon recovers from a dental procedure. Goon, we hope you're doing all right, buddy.
I think he's enjoying his recliner and probably some Sports Center right now.
There is not much that really phases me, and I actually do love my dentist and the whole crew down there. But man, every time I go, and I took about 10 or 12 years off from going to the dentist, period. And I was pretty good about taking care of my teeth, but I didn't go. Now I've gotten back into it. I don't know. It's probably going on 10 years now where I go twice a year and keep up with everything now. But every time I go, there is something about somebody, even if it's not hurting, even if everything is perfectly fine, there is something about people prodding around on the gums and teeth. It just, oh man, it just makes me squeamish.
Well, it's sensitive, and then they have 4 tools in your mouth, and they're trying to talk to you. They're asking you questions about, hey, how's the family, and they have 4. I'm saying, I can't even get a word out.
Oh, great.
And then if you have a procedure and something like Goon, man, it's something with the jaw, or one of the back teeth, wisdom teeth. those are rough. I mean, those will put you down for
Yeah.
those type of procedures will put you down for a little bit. They're rough to deal with.
Brutal stuff. So let's go to the schedule a little bit for the playoffs here. We're talking about the college football playoffs. They have released the format, the way they will go about the selection process. And again, if you're just joining us, they're calling it the 5+7. So they will take the 5 highest ranked conference champions. So in theory, it could be any conference champion from any of the conferences that have college football. I think we're still at 11, by the way, if you're wondering on that. 11 different conferences in college football. But presumably, much more often than not, it'll be the 5, what we call the 5 power conferences, although really we're down to 4 now, and I'm not sure. So that is going to be an interesting component too, is there another conference that emerges? There are so many moving parts. I kind of blanked on that with the Pac-12. I'm just now finally caught myself. It's like, no, there's not Power 5 really anymore. So, how is that going to look? Is there going to be a conference that emerges as the probably clearly fifth conference, or might we see just kind of, different years as different conferences that get an undefeated team that gets a lot of attention. So it'll be 5 conference champions, highest ranked, and then the next 7 highest ranked teams, regardless of where they're from or where they finished in their conference. And then from the seeding perspective, it'll be the top 4 conference champions. So the 4 highest ranked conference champions. And again, more often than not, boy, I've got to readjust my thinking on this. So it's 4 power conferences now. So it'll be Big 12, ACC, and then obviously Big 10 and SEC. You would presume the champions of those 4 conferences will be the top 4 seeds. And then, again, everybody else will go 5, but just by ranking from that point on, 5 through 12. So, and then from a scheduling standpoint, again, they'll start home stadiums for that first round. And the first games will be played on Friday night, December 20th. There will be 1 game, and then 3 games on Saturday, December 21st. So that Saturday the 21st, there will be college games in the opening round of the playoffs going up against the NFL. That is the same weekend that the NFL starts playing Saturday regular season games. So, I mean, at some point you're going to have to just bite the bullet on that, but that really is about it. Then you have 3 of the 4 quarterfinal games that will be played on New Year's Day. That'll be the Peach, Rose, and Sugar Bowls. And then a quarterfinal game, the Fiesta Bowl for this year, will be on New Year's Eve. So 1 game on New Year's Eve, 3 on New Year's Day. Then the semifinals, and this is where, I don't know, Landon. I was initially thinking that they might have to worry about classes, but I don't think that really is the case, because I think most, if not all, of the teams that would be involved here would still be off for winter break, I think. But it'll be Thursday, January 9th, will be at night, will be 1 semifinal game, and then Friday, January 10th, will be the other semifinal. And that is to avoid going head-to-head with the wild card weekend in the National Football League, which that makes sense. And then the championship game would be played on Monday, January 20th. So the thing I like about that is I do like having not 2 full weeks like you have with the Super Bowl, but I do like that they have a little extra time there from the semifinals to the championship game. That feels like a good thing to me for the 2 teams involved.
Yeah, I think it's going to give those guys some time. This is going to be a big adjustment going from normally you have a month of bowl prep. That month of December is really just a lot of time to prepare for one team. Just what that bowl prep looks like is going to be completely different now.
Yeah.
Knowing that you got to be ready for multiple teams, and I think also something that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on is those rankings on that last week. I think we see them switch up a lot, and the NCAA and the college playoff kind of manufacture certain matchups. And if where teams really should be, you might get moved back. You might get kind of screwed out of a spot because they want to put a certain game, maybe two teams that are both legendary, have never played against each other.
Yeah.
And hey, now we have the opportunity. We can orchestrate that game. We can put them, not put them head to head, and that's I think that's going to be good for the NCAA too and the college football playoffs.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see because we've been Jim Galati and I have talked about this, and I think Goon and I have talked about it too, where at least our expectation is that the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten and the SEC will each have more years than not anyway, at least 3 teams in. And I think, again, depending on how things play out, right? I mean, it's conceivable that you could have, it's conceivable that you could have, you could have 8,
right.
I guess. But I do think, I think those 2 conferences, there's a lot of years there where you could have 4 or even 5 teams from one or both of those conferences. You're not going to have 5 from both in the same year. But, I mean, so inevitably you're going to end up having, at some point, a first-round matchup between teams that have met already during the regular season. I don't know that that's necessarily a good or bad thing. You can, depending on the competitiveness of the game during the regular season, it may actually add to the drama, and with the fan bases, may help in terms of eyeballs to the TV set and all of that. I do love the overall format, and I do like the way it at least works out this first year, where, again, you have more than a week, but it's not 2 weeks from the quarterfinals to the semifinals to the championship game. I like that part of it. I think the Thursday, Friday night, I will be curious to see what the ratings are for those semifinal games in this inaugural year.
Yeah, I think that is going to be really interesting. And then also, you think about the non-bowl games, those first round of playoff games where it is a home playoff game. Think about the first home playoff game in Beaver Stadium. I mean, that thing could be rocking very well. Could be a second whiteout. Something,
Yeah.
You want the fans to be rowdy for that thing. That could be some legendary stuff in the making, and having these home playoff games for a team. And obviously you can't have any type of home championship or a bigger game, but that initial playoff, I think the fans, because most fans can't travel to these bowl games. They don't have, especially students, they don't have the funds for that. So having a home playoff game is going to be an insane atmosphere. I'm excited to see what that is like, not only at Penn State but other places around the country that just have great tradition.
That so again, that first round will be on a was it 1 on Friday night and then 3 on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Or was that the quarterfinals or both? Now I'm getting myself.
No, I think the quarterfinals was Thursday, and I'm getting confused too. Well, they're gonna have to battle with the NFL for a little bit while the NFL is still in season on those Saturdays, because as you know, in January the NFL plays on Saturdays, and I'm almost curious because college football has been pushed to make this change. Is the NFL going to maybe take away some of those January Saturdays that they've been doing, and thinking that we're thinking maybe we're encroaching on the NFL's turf, but maybe they're thinking, hey, we might change up too. I mean, college, football, NFL is king, but college football is, with NIL, with everything that's going on, the transfer portal, it is one of the biggest growing sports right now, and people want to watch it.
And listen, with this being the first year, right, there's going to be the intrigue of the novelty of it. And depending on some of those matchups, when and as you said, I think it will be really interesting to see the ratings on that initial Saturday. So yeah, so the first round, it is one game on Friday night. I'm thinking they are hoping that there's a Southern or Western team. I don't know. Beaver Stadium it would be a crazy atmosphere, but Beaver Stadium on a Friday night in the third week of December, that could be brutal. And obviously, same thing with Columbus or Ann Arbor or any of the northeastern or midwestern places you could think of. So there will be the one game in that first round on Friday night and then 3 on Saturday. I'm assuming it'll be one early afternoon, one mid-late afternoon, and then one night game there. So you're going to have 2 December night games at home venues. We'll see how that that plays out. Again, it'll be great theater, and like getting, Penn State bringing in Alabama to Beaver Stadium on December 20th could be, or on December 21st for a night game. That could be pretty fun.
Yeah, it could be fun. It could be problematic for some teams too. And I think, you see how deep the NFL obviously goes into the year, playing into February, and you get to see those fun snow games. You'll see a couple of them, and I played in one in Michigan State back in 2021. But for the most part, they're few and far between. I think we're going to see some really cool weather games now that we're playing deep into December with these home playoff games.
Yeah, and even so, again, the quarterfinal games, then they'll have the Fiesta Bowl will be on New Year's Eve, and I think New Year's Eve is a Tuesday. Am I right about that? Let me look that up real quick. Because so all of these weekends or all of these games basically will have, like, there will be more than a week but less than 2 weeks for each of the sessions. So yeah, New Year's Eve will be on a Tuesday, and then New Year's Day on a Wednesday. So you'll have, again, the one game out in Arizona on New Year's Eve on Tuesday, the 31st. And then you'll have 3 games. And again, I'm assuming they'll be staggered. It'll be like a noon, 4:30, and 8 o'clock Eastern time kickoff for the 3 games then on New Year's Day. Depending on the matchups, and listen, depending on the matchups with the NFL as well, I will be curious to see both on the head-to-head with the first weekend, but then like the ratings on New Year's Day versus the ratings for those NFL games on the wild card weekend. I'll be interested to see how many eyeballs are on the TV sets for each. I'll bet the college games are very, very comparable at the very least.
I think so too, Jeff. I think that just the attractiveness of this being the first year, everybody wants to tune into the new format, and like we talked about, see some matchups they haven't seen before. You start to get, and obviously now with the couple Pac-12 teams joining the Big Ten, but just normal matchups that you don't normally get to see are going to be, I think, a lot of fun, and the fans are going to be excited for it. We've seen that through the fact that these TV deals are worth billions of dollars each year. So it's clear that the college football playoffs and these TV companies are expecting it to be quite a success.
So I think we're down to 10. I'm just reading through a little more. We're down to 10 conferences now in FBS, and then so the College Football Playoff Management Committee is the 10 commissioners of the conferences in FBS. So is the Pac-12 then just like it is? I mean, I know it's done, but like it's not actually done, right? Because they still have, I don't think they've figured out yet what Oregon State and Washington State. I mean, I get it. But I think officially there's still a Pac-12 conference, even though it's, a little too at this point. So you have them, and then you have Notre Dame's athletic director as well. So you have the 11 members of the College Football Playoff Management Committee that have come up with this formula, schedule, and everything else. And again, overall, I like it. I don't know that there's any system that everybody's going to be completely pleased with, but this one, I love having those first round games at home venues. I like the fact that they're incorporating the bowl sites for the semifinals, for the quarterfinals and semifinals especially, and then the championship game. Couple of interesting things to note too, just reading through some of the stuff here this afternoon. There right now is not any playoff scheduled beyond 2025. So I think people are presuming, and I'm with you, I'm presuming also that the 12-team format will continue, but we do not know that with any kind of certainty just yet. Right now, this is all just for the upcoming year, and 2025 obviously is when it will finish up. The college football playoffs do not yet have a long-term television contract, which is also, I think, very interesting, Landon, in a couple of regards. And all of the stories I've read say they are actively negotiating that right now. But what I am wondering aloud is if there may not be a streaming component to this that they ultimately decide on, which for me, I completely would understand it. I'm kind of expecting it. I think it would be a mistake, at least at this stage. I get that is the direction, and we're heading kind of in warp speed toward that, where streaming is going to be the way of the day, maybe across the board for most athletics, if not all. But I think right now, one of the appeals that college football has is it does feel like it is one of those sports that it's an outreach to the everyday fan, the everyday person. And I think having that access, and listen, it's fewer and fewer people feel like they have access realistically with the economic situations they're in to go to more than a game. I mean, it may be a special event. And I know there are folks out there, oh, come on, I'm telling you, I know some of them. They're like, no, I love Penn State football, love to go, but like we save up to go to one game a year. Like that's just what we can realistically pull off. And obviously there's families that can't do that. Having the access on the TV, to me, free, not free for most. You're paying one way or another, but most folks are figuring out a way to get the cable bill or the satellite bill paid. Having that access, I think, is vital, at least at this stage. Now, maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll change as quickly as within a year. I know there's obviously a lot of work being done with broadband, trying to increase that in rural areas, but we're not there yet. And I think it would be a mistake right now for college football to go any other direction than TV, at least for the immediate future. And in my mind, we're talking at least the next 4 or 5 years with this next contract.
Yeah, we saw NFL try something like that with putting a playoff game exclusively on Peacock. There was a lot of uproar about that. People didn't really like that. And now, granted, Peacock is $5. It's on the lower side of a lot of those streaming services. Yeah. But you hear about it. People are not happy. And honestly, one of the reasons that cable is still even around is because of sports. I think without sports, cable really has no legs to stand on these days. I can't remember the last time that I turned on the TV really for anything but sports or some news. So I think you're right. I think these TV companies are going to try to hold on as long as possible and really try to keep the college football playoff away from these streaming services. But like I said, I think until there is one universal streaming service that kind of has everything, I think it's going to be hard for college football to want to just fully work with these streaming services, because it's going to displease the fans too much. And like I said, we've seen that with the NFL, and we've seen them try to do some events that are streaming only, and then hey, my grandma tries to get on to go watch it, and she's saying, hey, why is it not on TV? Or even with Amazon Prime and Thursday Night Football, almost everybody has it, but there's times where even I'll go on, I'm looking for it, I'm like, where is it on cable? And then I remember I have to turn on my Amazon Prime and look through it through that way. But it's it definitely causes some ruckus with a lot of the fans, and especially the older fans that aren't a fan of how much this whole landscape is changing with the streaming services. So
one other thing, one other thing just to look at, and this is from the Yahoo Sports story on this. I do think is at least interesting. So they took a look applying the teams, like putting Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA in the Big Ten, and looking back at the last, what was this, 10 years? The past 10 years. So putting the teams in the conferences that they are in for the upcoming football season. So Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC, the four formerly Pac-12 schools in the Big Ten, accounting for all of those teams in their new conferences. If you go back over the last decade, and it's a little flawed because obviously you don't know how things would have played out with those teams playing the Big Ten or the SEC schedules for the teams that were in from the SEC or for those teams that were in the other conferences. But, and this is what I think most of us are largely expecting moving forward, or at least in the upcoming year. And again, presuming that this thing does move forward in some fashion. SEC would have had 38 teams in the playoffs over the last decade. Big Ten would have had 35 teams in the playoffs over the last decade. And then the Big 12 with less than half of the Big Ten. Again, 3 teams separate the SEC and the Big Ten over a 10-year period. 38 SEC, 35 Big Ten, and then you're down to 17 for the Big 12. So again, it would be and then 14 for the ACC, 12 for the other conferences, and 4 times that Notre Dame would have been in there. So the SEC, on average, would have had 3.8 teams in the playoffs. Big Ten would have had 3.5. Big Ten would have had 1.7. ACC 1.4. Other conferences, an average of 1.2. So basically, and again, I think that's largely how this is, I'm at least expecting it to play out in the upcoming year, is your Big 12 champion, your ACC champion, somebody else from one of the other conferences, and then maybe one other, either Big 12 or ACC team, and then the rest will be Big Ten and SEC. Is what I'm expecting anyway in the upcoming year.
Yeah, I think we see how it's shifting, and how, like we talked about earlier, everybody's just coming to the SEC and Big Ten, and I think we'll see other big schools. We talked about Notre Dame, but the appeal that say a Colorado has in the Pac-12, they're going to want to get out of there. And I mean, if I'm a conference, I want Deion Sanders and what he brings to a program in my conference. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how many teams want to make that transition into either the Big Ten or the SEC. But one thing that I'm excited about too is, in the past and even this year, there were teams that felt that they were deserving of a playoff spot and didn't get it because a group of guys decided that they didn't deserve it. And now there's a lot more opportunity, and it's a prove it. It's a true playoff, and there's no more, hey, bias, or, you want this team in there because of what they bring to the table and their fans and their history. It's none of that. It's, if you're, and I don't think there's going to be as much, fighting over, who's the 13th and 12th seed. That's a little bit easier to determine than a top four.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that teams they don't get to sit behind that. Hey, the UCF, they made their own rings a couple years back saying that they deserve to be in the playoffs when they weren't put in, and there won't be much of that anymore. It's going to be a prove it. So I'm excited to see kind of how that looks going forward.
Yeah, and listen, the Big Ten and the SEC, and again, they right now are truly the power brokers in college athletics and college football. They are concerned about how this is going to get figured out. This being the revenue sharing and listen, I do think that is going to be a really, it's obviously a key component, but I think it's going to be a really difficult thing for everybody to, one, come to terms with, and two, get a model that they'll agree on. Because, again, looking at that, the no question, the Big Ten and the SEC dominate college football, dominated in terms of on-field results, dominated in terms of passion, packing the stadiums, bringing eyeballs to the TV set, the whole bit. But my contention is that you need those other conferences, you need those other teams. Now, whether you incorporate them into yours or whatever, but I mean, I don't think that it is going to be good for college football, although I could see a scenario where this happens, where you end up with, 40 teams that are quote unquote big time college football, like big time college football. And listen, we could make the argument. I could make the argument. It would be not unlike the NFL, right? Like, you're getting the best of the best. That you're going to get good competitive games every week. In some ways, maybe that is the direction that you should go. I will say, and you can probably answer this better, Landon, like, for college football players, I know fans like, oh man, can't believe we have to watch a Penn State Delaware game. But I want to make sure I'm phrasing this right. It's not that playing Delaware isn't physical and that you don't have bumps and bruises the day after. You have it no matter who you're playing. But it is a grind as it is. And again, with this schedule for two teams, and I get it's just two teams, but for two teams, this is going to be an August till late January, mid-late January. I mean, January 20th is late in the year, right? Like, that is 3 weeks beyond what we always thought of as the end of college football, which was New Year's Day for most of my life. You are basically starting preseason camp at the beginning of August, right? And now going through almost till the end of January. Like, that is a long, I know it's a grind anyway. If you actually got to the point where there were, again, let's just say 40 teams, and so you were having, like, your lesser games would be against teams that we would think of now as like Wisconsin, Iowa. Like, those are not what you think of as lesser games. Like, those are big time contests. If you were going through a 12-game schedule where every week you are playing that type of physical football, and then a conference championship game, and again, I get it's not everybody. It's at the end of the day, two teams that'll be playing all the way out. But you're talking about you're talking about an NFL schedule. It's a 17-game grind, and you're not really giving your body much of a break in there. I mean, you tell me, with the college class component and everything else that comes with college, like, boy, from the outside looking in, like, I think that is asking too much of the student athletes, and we're still going to, for the time being, refer to them as student athletes.
Yeah, I think that this is going to put a huge strain on the student athletes, on these football players, and it's going to these coaches are going to they're going to have to change how they operate, weekly. Right now, you go to NFL practice later in the season, anytime after week 2 or week 3, and even week 1, they cut padded practices in the NFL. You have 2 padded practices a week in college football and the game, so you're hitting 3 times a week for 17 weeks. And there's a reason why, and they're a little bit older. Obviously, there's guys that are in their 30s, but there's a reason why the NFL cannot do padded practices once you get later into the season. So I think the format of college football is going to take a big turn and change significantly. And then also, we just got done talking about how brutal that offseason is, and you get maybe a week or 2 for that body to recover. And now, if you play in that championship game, you're looking at 6 full months of a beating on your body, and now you're supposed to turn around and do spring ball, late February, maybe early March, a little over a month off for your body after going at it for 6 months. It's unsustainable. So I think not only we've talked about how many different ways we're going to see college football evolve, I think how these coaches format the entire year. And I actually just went through with me and Jim Galante on Keystone Sports Network about 2 weeks ago. I went through what a whole year looks like as a Penn State football player from January all the way to December in the bowl game. And I think that's going to be completely different from what I described in a couple years. I think it's going to look just totally different, and you're going to have to, or players aren't going to make it through the season.
Yeah, I agree. The spring is going to have to be a time for the players to kind of be on their own. I mean, there may be some guidelines in terms of, hey, we want you working on this, but especially if you are going to retain, and presumably the Big Ten and the SEC are going to try to retain the academic component to this. My opinion here, but you cannot ask the players to go through the grind that will be that fall and then into January for 8 teams, and then 4 teams well into January, and for 2 again toward the end. And then expect them to come to maintain their classwork and come back. Again, they'll be starting for those 2 teams at least the first week or 2, but at least the first week of the spring semester. You're going to be missing some time, maybe all of it. You've got to let these kids get back into the classroom. And again, they can continue workouts, but I think spring practice is going to have to go by the wayside, at least as we know. You may, again, have some workouts and stuff, but I don't think you can have spring practices with this schedule and then preseason practices in August and say, oh, yeah, by the way, we want you to enjoy the whole college experience, get out there, be part of the community, and, maintain good grades. Like there is a limit here to what I think is realistic to expect of the college student athlete.
Yeah, well, we talked earlier about using the term student athlete very loosely and how it's changed over these past couple of years. I think it's going to be interesting. We've talked about players unionizing, and that changes everything. Then that changes the players. Instead of being a student, you are an employee. You're going to be taxed on if you do have a scholarship, you have to be taxed on that. Everything you get, you're then taxed on: food, clothes. It's just going to change a lot, and it's professionalism now. I mean, that's what we're headed towards. It is no longer an amateur sport. And it's going to be interesting to see how these schools and the NCAA decide to navigate this. It's the wild, wild west, and no one knows what's going to happen next. I think that's the hardest part, and everybody is trying to get a beat on what everybody else is doing, just because it's so new to every program that you're just trying to one up, and then you see Ohio State come out with 15 million in one year, and that it's hard to compete with that, and you got it, but like I said, in this day and age, you just got to keep going, and it's going to be difficult to keep up with those top dogs.
Well, and how to go about the revenue sharing. Again, that is that is going to be such a key component here, Landon, and trying to, like, if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, right? You're like, well, we're, as the graphic show, like, we are the ones that are driving this. We're driving the eyeballs to the TV set. We're driving folks to the stadium, even in the games at, when we go to an SEC school, like, you're benefiting from us being there. So, like, I can't imagine that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to say, yep, let's just put everything into a big pot and then we distribute it evenly among all of the Division I or FBS schools that are currently out there. But if you don't do that or something similar, right, then this can't, I mean, the MAC and arguably can't compete now, but I mean, if you are allowing the Big Ten and the SEC to keep, and I'm guessing, I mean, I don't obviously know what the discussions are, but if they're saying, listen, we need to keep proportional amount of money to what we're bringing in, then again, at the end of the day, I think those two, and maybe you bring the ACC and Big 12 along, maybe, but like, it doesn't make sense then to continue with the other, whatever it is now, 6 conferences and say that we're having any kind of a competitive contest.
Well, it's interesting looking at it from that standpoint. And I think one thing that this new college football playoff, NIL, all this stuff does is these teams that say don't make the college football playoff, then we talked about, that don't matter as much. What are bowl games now? If you're not in the playoff, do these bowl games, I mean, they have so much less significance. Before, if you weren't in the top 4, it was okay. There was still a lot to look at. But now you start to bring in the top 12, it doesn't matter as much. And I don't think you'll see really virtually any player that's big time if they're not in those top 12 teams. They're not playing in their bowl game. It's 100%. They're out of there. So I think the new format is great, and it's great for those 12 teams each year. But I think it arguably hurts those teams that aren't making it even way more than it was before. So I'm kind of interested to see how that how the bowl games are going to look that aren't the big time bowls that are part of the playoffs.
There's a lot of moving parts, obviously, as there have been for the last few years, but trying to get your hands around all of this and the way it's ultimately going to look. And again, I don't think anybody knows. I mean, that's part of what they're trying to hash out here. And I would love to be in on those discussions, just to listen, because I'm wondering what the viewpoint is. Because part of me thinks, Landon, that they probably are saying, they being the Big Ten and the SEC, are saying, yeah, listen, we have a great product here. Like, we can just do this and let the others, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, like, you can still have college athletics. And in some ways, maybe that would be the best thing, because then the tier 1, I think you could have a reduced schedule and not have a negative economic impact. I mean, part of this right now is, again, there's so many teams involved that have no chance of getting to the playoffs, let alone winning a national title. I mean, well over half of the teams that are in FBS right now have a 0% chance of winning the national title at the start of the season. I don't care what kind of team that they're able to put together. It's just not going to happen. So, maybe at the end of the day, it's like, all right, we get I keep using 40, but whatever it is, 35, 50, 40 teams that are like, yep, we realize all the pitfalls, but we're going to figure this out. And we want to do, quote unquote, big time new Division I athletics, and we're okay with the in essence paying the players and figuring out the new schedules and all of that. But I think a lot of these schools, I have to believe, are saying, listen, yeah, we are not going to put together a collective that is going to allow us to be anywhere in the ballpark of competitive. We'd still like to do college athletics. We can go back to maybe more of a regional concept where we recruit our area, maybe some neighboring ones, and we can play. I think that's the way this is going to evolve. And I don't know whether that's better or worse at the end of the day for everybody moving forward. I don't know that it's necessarily either. It's just, I think, going to be different. And I think that's at least the direction I think this is almost going to have to move, because, again, there just are not a lot of schools that are wanting or able to compete on the NIL front, the transfer portal, the facilities, and all of that. And by the way, including, I think, some SEC and Big Ten schools. Like we've been talking about, Goon especially thinks that the Big Ten's going to have some conversations with some of their member schools at some point and say, listen, this just isn't working. Like it's not good for you. It's not good for us. Go off and find, that, again, second tier, for lack of a better term, and, find your home there. But the big boys got to move on here. And again, I don't use big boys. I am very open to the argument that, that's what real college athletics is this tier 2 or tier 3 concept. I hear you and I get it, but there's no way this thing goes, we're down the track way too far now. And legally, as you said, I mean, the courts, if college football doesn't get out in front of this, eventually the students are going to unionize and the courts are going to say, you are going to share the revenue like that. I mean, that's inevitable. So they have to get in front of it and figure out a way to make it work. And that is going to be a very tricky thing. And that's obviously what we'll continue to talk about and watch very closely over the upcoming year. We'll take a break here. You are listening to WFXS Pleasant Gap State College. We appreciate you doing so. It is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. Jeff Byers, Landon Tengwall. We are back with more from Quaker Steak and Lube in mere minutes.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look, hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
And we welcome you back here on this Tuesday afternoon. Jeff Byers and Landon Tengwall filling in for Goon here today. Been talking a lot about the college football playoffs and the ever-changing world of college football and college athletics, and it is definitely a different world, and it is going to be really challenging for all involved to just kind of navigate now these next few years and kind of see the direction and the trajectory. And listen, it's going to change. There's no way around that. It's not going to be the college athletics we grew up with. But I still remain open to exactly ultimately. There are a lot of people predicting that, unless this is the end of college athletics and nobody's like they're going to ruin it. I'm always really hesitant to go down that road because we love sports. Like, we love big time competitive sports. So big time meaning fast, strong athletes that can do things that most of us can only dream about. And with the college component, there is a passion and an enthusiasm that is just different level. And again, what I am expecting to happen is that there's going to be, we've always had different tiers. There's Division III, Division II, Division I. Now there's FBS and FCS and right on down the line. But I think there may be more tiers now, basically, that will come into play. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Again, one of the things that I don't like, just as a fan or even somebody covering the games, like what draws you to sports, what draws most of us to sports, I think is a few things. One is there's that feeling of community. Like we like being part of something that feels like, man, this is bigger than any of us. The whiteout at Beaver Stadium comes to mind. The wrestling match at the Jordan Center comes to mind. Like those are just really neat, cool opportunities for the athletes that are involved, for the fans, for everybody surrounding those events. So I think those are big. The storylines, folks overcoming obstacles, folks coming from tough circumstances, a group of disparate backgrounds coming together and forming a team that goes out and does great things. Like those are compelling. But one of the things that the casual fan wants, right, is a competitive game. Like we'll turn it off if it's not one of our teams. It's like, oh, this game's it's 35-0 at halftime. I'm out. I'll go find something else. Well, you have a lot of that in college football and in college athletics. And I get that you have it, Ohio State can blow out Penn State or Penn State can blow out Ohio State. I mean, those things happen, but they happen consistently when you're playing a MAC school if you're the Big Ten. And I get once in a blue moon, MAC schools win. I understand it, and I appreciate the upset drama that comes with that. And, Appalachian State beating Michigan, fantastic stuff. But I do think if you broke it down to more, whether it's 40, 50 teams that play tier 1 college football, right, you're going to get more competitive games, more compelling games. And right on down the line, I think for the teams that are like 50 to 100 or 50 to 150, then, they go into that next tier, whatever it is. And I don't know how you even go about determining this, but I think they will. I mean, I just don't think there's enough money to go around with all of the different sports teams that all of these different schools are supporting. And again, when you're looking now at what I think the SEC and the Big Ten are going to want to use to attract the top tier athletes to their programs, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, and that is completely possible. But I really don't see a situation where they're going to be able to come to an agreement where, yep, we're just going to evenly spread the money around these 10 conferences and all of the schools that are involved here, and do our revenue sharing off of that. And especially, again, when the Big Ten and the SEC and the sports that they compete in want to have those broad-based athletic programs, and they want to be competitive and fighting it out with other top-tier programs on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Jeff. I think you're going to see the disparity level in college football widen even more.
Yeah.
And, and that's through the fact, and we were talking about this just off air, that it is going to continue to get even worse as far as the change. I guess, maybe worse or better, whatever you want to say, whatever you think of it, but just constant change in college football. And I think there was a reason that we saw the college football playoffs not go too far in advance in setting up the playoff system, because they understand what is going to occur, which is just constant change. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, maybe bumping some lower teams out of the conferences. And I think it almost starts to turn into, and now granted, there's still some good teams in the Big 12 and the ACC, but I think it almost starts to turn into two big conferences, almost the AFC and NFC type deal. And then it's still college football. So you have those lower level guys that are kind of duking it out to maybe try to fight their way into the 12-team playoff. But it's almost more like, hey, I want to get into the Big Ten or the SEC if I'm a decent team in a different conference. And then that starts to cause problems for these lower level, say a Vanderbilt, a Purdue, these lower level teams in these conferences. Do these conferences really want them when, say, you could add? Yeah, I got the option to add Notre Dame. Well, who are you taking, Notre Dame or Rutgers? I want Notre Dame in my conference, or I said, something attractive like a Colorado. I think that would be killer in the SEC. So it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, how the NCAA and these conferences navigate that. But I think we just, like I said, can continue to see that gap widen of just the teams and really just. This new format is just going to make it more obvious which teams are contenders and which teams are just playing college football because they kind of have to. It should be interesting.
Yeah, and again, we'll see. We'll see how all of this evolves. There's obviously a lot of discussions going on, but I think they know they need to move fairly quickly here, because if they don't get out in front of this. They being the conference commissioners. I mean, it is coming. Like the students see their opportunity here, and the courts clearly are going to side. Like, they have to figure out a revenue sharing system, or it will be figured out for them. And I think everybody involved in the sports, in intercollegiate sports, understands that now. Whether you like it, whether you agree with it, that it's coming. And again, they just have to get it figured out. But the devil, as they say, will be in the details. And there are a lot of details to this, because, again, one, who all is involved, who remains involved in this type of intercollegiate athletics, where, again, you have and listen, part of what I think is going to happen, I think the NIL stuff, which everybody is all hot and heavy over right now, I think that's going to go away sooner rather than later. I think once you get the revenue sharing in place, and again, I think that's going to happen within the next couple of months here, like that plan at least. Then I think that the NIL, there's no need for it, for one. And I mean, kids will still be able to go out and do endorsement deals, but I don't think now schools may set up, hey, these are the agents that we approve of. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to dictate, but you can tell your kids, hey, we trust these agents. I mean, these are the ones that we have. But I mean, again, I don't think you're going to be able to control if a kid says, I have my own guy, I'm using him. I think the schools are going to have to say that that's fine, but maybe just trying to give some guidance there to be helpful. But and truthfully, I think getting the NIL out of it would be helpful, because that has been a disaster in every which way. And nobody's fault, really. I mean, in terms of the folks that are doing the NILs or the schools, I mean, the NCAA, I guess when I say it's nobody's fault, it's the NCAA's fault. When in doubt, always blame the NCAA, and you'll be right more often than not. But honestly, the NCAA, you go to that Tennessee case, it's like, I'm not going to rehash that whole thing, but basically the NCAA had said, listen, the athletic departments, you guys can't be dictating and involved with the NIL. And then the NIL at Tennessee went out and did some stuff that wasn't sanctioned or approved. And the NCAA comes back to Tennessee's administration and says, well, this is a lack of institutional control. Yeah, it's a lack of institutional control that you mandated on all of these schools. Like, again, the sooner we can just be done with the NCAA, figure out whatever this is going to look like moving forward. But to me, the two big things are, okay, how do you divide the pie, and with whom all do you divide the pie? And then, how do you set up, well, I guess off of that, how much of that pie do you set aside for the other student athletes on campus? And, what does that look like in terms of, setting up a nonprofit or something similar, so that there's some benefit for football programs to continue to set that money aside, or big time Division I basketball programs. And that's the other component here, Landon. I'm kind of focused here on football, but obviously there are more schools that are going to be able to do big time basketball. Now, I don't know, it's a ton more, it's going to be more, but again, when you're talking about the NIL stuff right now, but eventually the revenue sharing, again, I think more will be able to participate and spread around there on the basketball front. But I don't think there it's going to be the way it is now either. And for the schools that do rely on basketball solely as the provider for the other sports, like, that's another whole component here is, how does that look? And is there enough money going around from the basketball pie to make that workable for some of the schools that, again, don't have Division I or FBS football these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting, like you said, to see. Obviously, there's Title IX rules. It's going to have to be shared, in some way, as much as the administration probably wishes not. I mean, obviously, you want to spread the wealth to a certain extent, but there is that somewhat, selfishness, and it's interesting too that NIL has caused so many problems. Just like we've seen in court, bringing the Supreme Court into it, which the Supreme Court, by the way, never rules 9-0 on anything ever. And this is the one thing they all agree on.
Yes.
It's pretty evident then that the NCAA is in the wrong, so to speak, here. And should be ready for some type of, and I think we start to look for it to be some type of salary-based, deal here. NIL it's something that's not at all out there for anybody to really know. No one has to report how much they actually make. And that's the problem with all the whispers of, hey, this guy's making $5 million and Marvin Harrison's being offered 20, 30 million to come back. And it's just all rumors, and there's no, real anything put on paper. So I think once you start to put, hey, a good quarterback in college football is making whatever, $500, $1 million a year, and that precedent is set, okay, then you can start to work from there. But right now, it's just there's no precedent that has been set for as far as how much people are making. And then, like I said, you hear these rumors about people making absurd amount of money in college football. So I just look for, and we've said the word structure a couple of times, I just look for the NCAA to try their best to structure this and just make it as easy as possible, because it is just such a messy situation right now with NIL, and they felt the pressure obviously from the courts to do something back in the summer of 21, and change what was going on and finally allow the players to make some type of money. But I think looking back, they probably wish they would have waited a little bit longer and put a little bit more design into the whole NIL landscape.
Yeah, and the other the other component there. So to some degree, the letters of intent, I guess, have always been like legal documents, but like it is actually going to be a contractual. Like the lawyers, as always, are going to make out on this, because you are going to have a lot of specificity put in place, and you have to, from the school's standpoint and from the student athletes and their families' standpoint coming out of high school. Like it's going to have to be all written out. These are the expectations in order for you to receive the money, whatever the monetary agreement is. Like, this is what you have to do. This is where there would be a breach of contract. And where I think some of this is going to get tricky too, Landon, because there's always been, right, we've heard whispers, at least sometimes a lot more than whispers, of some schools, some coaches are, hey, professor, like, we got a Final Four game. Like, our center, I know he didn't show up to class that week, but dude, I mean, come on, you're not, like, we need him. I can only imagine. I mean, and I don't know how this stuff gets written in, right? But like, you can't have from a school's perspective, this is going to be really, really difficult to manage, because again, contractually, I have to be at practice these times, I have to do this. And I think there's going to be parameters put in for academics as well. But and again, there's always been, I think, some of that component. We've heard it from other schools, but I think even more so, like, somehow you're going to have to break apart the two and have separate discussions. And I don't know, like, I don't know how that looks or what that looks like, because already there are different schools that handle it different ways. And, I'm not going to tell you Penn State has never had any issues there. I do think Penn State genuinely has tried to do the right thing, since going back to Joe Paterno and even before that, and across the board. I mean, I know enough of the coaches well enough to know that there is a genuine priority put on academics. But if your job, and it is a job now, is playing football or any of the other sports, and the coach's job is to produce a winning product, like, it is pretty hard for academics not to take a back seat here.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about with the professionalism. I think, it's going to maybe turn into an option of, hey, you can get a scholarship if you want. And like you talked about, you might be taxed on it. And then it turns into hey, I want to go play football, but this coach is requiring me to go to school. Well, this other coach says, hey, you don't have to go to school if you come to my program.
Yeah.
So that's a way to, and I think most people would agree that would be such a mistake to move away from these athletes graduating. And obviously, speaking from experience, someone who you have to go your plan B route, and you need to be able to fall back on that degree. And to have a degree from a place like Penn State for free means so much. But now you're allowing these kids, these 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids, to make the decision for themselves. Hey, I don't need a degree, forget it. Yeah. I think anybody with some age and some wisdom can say that's going to be a mistake down the line. And then also you look at things, the way that college football is right now with the transfer portal and NIL, it's going to be interesting to see how this changes that from a standpoint of, I guess just, you're going to get locked into a contract now. You're going to be signing a real contract that says, we're going to pay you X amount of money for over this many years. In the NFL, you can't really just get up and leave. I mean, unless you're fired or let go, you're locked into that contract. So are we going to do away with this free agency after every season? And so how is that going to look? Is it going to be a lot of unhappy kids that are essentially stuck at a place? And I think that's kind of needed to be reworked anyways, because the college football, how it was, you're supposed to have your guys for 4 or 5 years, get to know them be in the community. And that was a big plus side to NIL, that now you go to your local, whatever, coffee shop, local bar, and you get to see a player, you get to see their personality showcased. And think back, 2012, earlier and even earlier on, you didn't get to understand someone's identity or, their family or what kind of background they come from. You just saw them on the field and saw the plays that they make. But now you get to understand, who these players are. So and I think that's kind of the appeal to the fans. So I would like to see more people staying. And we've seen recently, I mean, we just played Ole Miss, and their running back, Judkins, essentially didn't think he was making enough money, and Ole Miss brought in a lot of people, and he said, hey, I want a bigger cut, so I'm going to go to Ohio State. And as a fan, that makes me mad. We had a guy who just finished up his second year, absolute stud for us, 2 years at running back, and now because there's not enough NIL money in the tank, he's gone to Ohio State. And essentially, and we like to think of tradition, but if someone leaves after 2 or 3 years at Penn State and goes to play somewhere else, you're always a Penn Stater, but that changes things, and you don't like to see that as much as a fan. You're happy for those guys that say, maybe don't have that opportunity, and they go somewhere else, a Will Levis, situations like that. You're happy for those guys in those situations, but the more common occurrence is guys just leaving after a year or two because they're not happy with either their playing time or now how much money they're getting paid.
Yeah, it's such a different dynamic, and it is hard, I think, for most of us to get our head around that. Like, if the reason you chose the school in the first place is still there, and presumably it is, but I turn around and it's this same thing. And again, we are down that professional path here, and I don't think there's any turning back. But I guess you can say much the same thing about a professional athlete. You sign that first contract, and then either you or the team can say, you know what, this has been great, nothing against you, but I have a better offer over here. Or, hey, you've been great, nothing against you, but we've got a better prospect that we're going to draft. The loyalty component probably has always been a little overrated in terms of the what it actually means going both ways. But again, I do think at a place like Penn State, it does mean something. And I mean, we've seen over the years, and where guys have gotten injured or just haven't panned out. It's like put in the effort. It's just not. Yeah, you're not Division I. Big time athletic caliber, but good kid, good person, all of that. And it's like, and there will be schools. I mean, and we know this, that there are schools. It's like, yeah, we appreciate everything you've done, but we got to get a scholarship for somebody that's going to get playing time. I mean, Penn State, to its credit, now it may have changed a little bit here now, where it's like, hey, if you want the playing time. Again, because of the transfer portal, I guess I'm dating myself a little bit here, because now I think it's an honest conversation, and I think you can, hey, just so you know, like, we'll keep you on scholarship, but man, it's not going to work out the way you were hoping. Does it make sense? Right. So I think there's probably more of those conversations now that go on, and that's probably a healthy thing. But again, there was a time where. Now, there were also kids who didn't, as you said, didn't want to be here, were stuck. And it's like, yeah, I would love to go to Ohio State, or especially in conference. It just wasn't happening. That wasn't right either. And I do think that maybe with the revenue sharing, that we can strike a little bit more of a balance where, you're not leaving because it's more money. It's going to be the same money. Now you might get a different endorsement deal and that stuff, and there's no way to go around that. But I think in terms of the basic contract, I think it's going to be the same. And so now it's like, well, yeah, I genuinely don't think I'm getting enough playing time, or I just am not fitting in. Fine, like that makes sense. Go on and find a better spot, but not be driven just by, hey, I think I can get a better deal over here than what I have at my current spot.
What's also interesting too is I think if we go the salary route, we'll see salary caps, obviously. And so like you talked about, it's going to be the same here as it is as Alabama, as it is at Ohio State. So then, the question becomes, are we going to right now, and I talked about earlier, we saw a bunch of teams in the NIL era so far in just the 4 college playoff team format. We saw a bunch of new teams with TCU, Texas, Washington. So are we going to kind of revert back if we go back to essentially everybody's the same, how we were before? Are we going to go back to seeing the same teams, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Clemsons, Ohio State that kind of dominated the playoffs in the past? Will we kind of see that continue on if we go back to putting everybody under the same standard, essentially? Because right now it's not like that at all. If you get lucky enough to have a multi-billion-dollar donor just float over to you, well, you're living the good life right now because you have something that maybe some other schools don't exactly have at their disposal.
Although I will say in a team sport like football land, and I do wonder sometimes, like I am really curious to see how Ohio State does in the upcoming season. There's no question that is a roster loaded with talent, and I'm not predicting anything either way, but I do think Ryan Day has his work cut out in terms of, and we've seen this over the years in professional sports where it's like, oh yeah, that roster clearly is the best in the league. And then like, well, yeah, but they didn't win the championship because you got to manage a lot of egos. You got to assuage a lot of feelings there. Again, I don't think there's a coach out there that would say, given the choice of a loaded roster talent-wise or one with just a bunch of hardworking kids that aren't as talented, I think most give me the talent, I'll manage it. But that comes with its own set of challenges. And I am really curious to see, we talk about the highest paid baseball teams. I mean, the Yankees aren't winning World Series every year. The Dodgers will be a fascinating watch this year. No question. They have the most talented roster in Major League Baseball. We'll see if they go out and win the championship.
Yeah, well, you look at teams that have kind of went by that model of throw as much money at the program as possible. It hasn't exactly worked out. We saw what happened with Texas A&M. They got multiple 5 stars, and then I even saw some of them take to Twitter either the season or 2 seasons later and talk about, I'm entering the transfer portal, and I didn't even get paid the money that I was stated I was going to be paid. So that's another thing. NIL contracts are not at all binding.
Yeah.
If you have a good agent and you get stuff in writing and signed, then obviously it is. But there's a lot of, take my word for it type deals going on in the NIL landscape right now. So that's going to be interesting to see that change, because that needs to too. There's too much of just promises not being made, and I've heard a lot of stories about guys getting pulled away from teams, which is technically illegal. Saying, hey, we're going to set you up, hundreds of thousands of dollars, a car, a house, and they get there and they're not getting anything of that nature. And so, and then also you talked about building a team. If you look at the NFL, how much does that offseason, the team that won the offseason, how often do they really actually do something in the regular season?
Yeah.
I mean, you see the New York Jets, they won the offseason. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers got hurt 5 plays into the season. The year before that, the Broncos were absolutely awful, and they were supposed to win the Super Bowl. So, to your point, it's interesting. Can you really build a team? Does that, or buy a team? Excuse me. Does that work? Do you need to go back to building a roster from the ground up and having guys that want to play for each other instead of, hey, I'm coming here because I got offered $1.5 million and I don't really care. I'm coming here for a check. And I think that's what we saw at Miami, at Texas A&M, at other schools that right when NIL started, they just threw millions of dollars at it, and it did not work out. It actually, exacerbated the problem even worse. So,
yeah, and again, if you come in with those expectations, and there's no question, Ohio State now is expected to certainly win the Big Ten, and I think most now would put them as the favorite to win the national title. Again, that has its own set of issues that you've got to deal with. You're going to be reading how great you are day after day. People are going to be telling you how great you are day after day. Can you keep the work ethic? Can you, again, navigate a locker room that is filled with other big-time stars? Are you going to get the football enough? Can you spread it around enough to keep everybody or enough people happy? Like that. Again, to me, they're going to be just a fascinating case study. Maybe it'll all come together. Maybe they go out and blow everybody out and they win the national title. I'm just not as convinced. I'm convinced that they are the most talented team. I don't think the most talented team always wins. In fact, in sports like football and even basketball, there's a lot of different components to it, and talent is certainly part of it. I mean, I'm not sitting here telling you that an untalented team is going to go out and win it, but that separation between a 5-star and a 4-star, or a first-team All-American and a third-team All-American, it's not that great. I mean, there are certain guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., like that dude was different level. Penn State Wrestling, Aaron Brooks that's a different level dude. There are those guys, no question about it. And those are your difference makers. But you still need, even with your difference makers, you need the supporting cast, and you need people that are pulling together and okay with you being the difference maker, recognizing that and understanding their role in it. I'm just telling you, that is not always an easy thing to navigate if you're a coaching staff or a head coach to be able to manage all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you start, and then you have, right now you have NIL spats. You'll have locker room issues where it's, hey, why is this guy making more money than me? And now, let's say maybe I took his job or something. Well, he's locked in for that year for the contract he's making. So now with NIL, this guy is third string, second string, and now I'm the first string, but he's making double my salary. But that was just the expectation for him. So, you see that stuff in the locker room, and guys, feel that they deserve more than they're getting, and it can cause a lot of problems. And I think at other universities, and Penn State does a good job of making sure that everybody gets something as far from a football standpoint. And it's not like that in other places, and even other big programs.
Yeah.
From talking to people I know around the college football world, there are some big programs out there that are just giving all their money to the starters and the top guys. And if you're a second or third string guy or even deeper, you're not seeing any NIL money. And like I said, that can cause some gripes in the locker room with people, and just kind of just kill the entire vibe of a locker room, which is so important throughout a season to keep that strong and have your leaders make sure everybody's staying together. And stuff like that can completely just dismember a team mid-season that had potential to maybe say go to the playoffs or win a national championship. And there's so much internal conflict that you can't even, string together a couple wins. That's dangerous.
Yeah, you can see how it can happen very easily and very quickly. I mean, your star wide receiver drops the ball, and all of a sudden everybody, hey, you're supposed to be the guy. Like that's, stuff happens, and then all of a sudden, yeah, the things, winning cures a lot of things, but not necessarily everything. So we'll see. I think it'll be a fascinating case study here. Story, I'm not necessarily looking for you to comment on this one, Landon, but I did just want to touch on this, and we may get into it a little more on Thursday. But there was a lawsuit filed at Nebraska. Ashley Scoggin, who played basketball from 2020 through 2022, has filed a lawsuit against then associate head coach Chuck Love. He resigned at the end of that 2022 season. Scoggin left the program. She has filed a civil lawsuit, filed it over the weekend, and says that Chuck Love, who was then the associate head coach for the women's basketball program, to Amy Williams, who is still the head coach of the women's program. According to the civil lawsuit, Scoggin is saying that Love groomed her into a sexual relationship. The allegation from Scoggin is that Williams then learned about it because, and this is a sordid tale, and Trev Alberts, the athletic director, according to the lawsuit, was also made aware of this. The way this came to light, according to the lawsuit, was actually in State College here when Nebraska was in Happy Valley for a game. Some of the players on the team got a key to, I'm not sure if it was either, I think it was Love's room, but it was got a key to the room, saying that they had lost the key. And anyways, they finagled their way into the room with a video camera because they had suspected, I guess, that this relationship was going on, and they videotaped whatever portion of this that occurred. Is, again, the allegation in this lawsuit. Scoggin is seeking unspecified damages for the alleged violation. In the story, she says that the players then made the coach, Amy Williams, the head coach, aware of the situation, and that they had a team meeting that next morning, and that basically it was kind of open season, and they ridiculed Scoggin, is, again, her allegation, and that, you know, Love was then suspended with pay. Scoggin was suspended from the team or removed from the roster. Again, these are allegations, a lot of things to go through here. It is interesting. Nebraska, I think, has a game tonight. I'm curious to see if Williams is on the sideline. Nebraska, by the way, says that there are a lot of inaccuracies in the lawsuit, and they are denying much of what is alleged, and are saying that they are going to defend it vigorously. And again, we'll see how all of this plays out. It is an ugly situation. And again, at this point, I will point out we are getting one side of the story. It is quite a story. It is quite a concerning story, but it is one side of the story we're getting at this point. So we'll see, how this moves forward. It is interesting to me. The two stories I read on this, neither of them mentioned Love's age, either at the time or now. I've done a little research. I don't have his exact age, but he's at the time, he would have been at least in his early 30s, early to mid 30s. And he was, and I have in either of the stories, and I just find it interesting, curious even, that his age wasn't mentioned, nor was his marital status, which he was married with kids. Listen, this is if the relationship did occur, it is no question unethical from the get-go, but there are different levels, I guess, for me, of how unethical. And this is, if true, about as unethical as it gets. Again, speaking just for myself. But allegations at this point, and again, Nebraska is saying it will defend itself and the parties involved here vigorously. It is worth noting, again, Love was suspended with pay and then was, resigned at the end of that season in 2022. So we'll follow more on that story, undoubtedly, in the coming weeks. That is going to wrap things up for today. Landon, thanks for filling in for the Goon. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Always good to hear him, of course, on our airwaves with Jim Galati frequently as well. The Dear Goon we trust will be back on Thursday, hopefully recovered and able to speak clearly, and we'll have some more fun on Thursday. Right now, Landon and I are going to go eat some wings here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Folks, we hope you have a great evening. We'll talk to you Thursday. Until then, be good and be safe.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
Since retiring, I have spent my time searching the countryside for the hottest wings in America. I always seem to end up disappointed. You call these hot? Back off, Luigi.
Mamma mia.
Look, hands it, busboy. Your wings suck! I knew I should have stuck with Quaker Steak's triple atomic wings. You think I'm tough enough?
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
Sioka Toyota of Williamsport invites you to stop in today or check us out online. We have the smart path to your next Toyota, like the all-new Crown, BZ4X, the all-new Grand Highlander, Corolla Cross Hybrids, Sequoias, and more. Over 100 new Toyotas here and on the way. Don't make a $1,000 mistake. Choose Sioka Toyota of Williamsport and see the Sioka dealership's difference. Buy or reserve yours today and see for yourself why Sioka Toyota is the only stop you need for your next new car. Sioka Toyota, it just feels right.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.